Hey, welcome back to Behind the Gloss. I'm Shakai Monet, and today I have Greta, the founder of Marker Video. So, hi, Greta, how are you?
Hi, I am great today. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. So, I love Marker Video. When I found it, the only question I had was, how had no one come up with this sooner? And I think that's like a great mark of a great business. So, I'm sure as the owner and founder, you get asked this question a lot, but do you mind explaining to us what is Marker Video?
Yes, absolutely. So, Marker Video is a very simple business. It's basically a platform where regular people can upload a 30-second review of a place or a thing, a product, a brand, anything that they really use and they love and they authentically want to tell people how good it is. So they just make a 30-second review, they upload it onto our platform. We then take it in, make sure it's good quality, whatever. We have certain things in the tech that'll do that. And then it gets published on the platform and we contact the brand that was mentioned in the video. And then the brand can purchase it as an ad. So it's basically, I suppose, an ad shop. And the purpose of it, I suppose, is so that big brands can just like take ads off the shelf and they don't need to worry about paying the creator because we pay the creators automatically through our system. So I basically just wanted to streamline, obviously there's a lot of content out there and I just wanted to build something that was really simple to use for both the users, the regular people who are using it, and then the brands who are trying to shop for this stuff. So yeah, I
Oh,
get I get that a lot. How is this not already out there?
yeah, because it's such a good idea, especially in this digital age, and you see ads everywhere. And I hope I'm not the only one that feels it, but sometimes the ads are annoying. It's like,
Mhm. Yeah,
again,
and I
like, okay.
I think that that has kind of happened almost, quite quickly. Like I think there was a huge influencer time in our lives and they worked extremely well for a stage. And I certainly was influenced by a lot of people and I still am. Victoria Beckham put something up, I'll watch it because I really admire her and I think she's great taste. And there are certain people like the likes of Victoria Beckham or big sports stars or, that you respect them and you follow them and you're influenced by them because you like their taste or you like what they stand for or whatever. But I think it just got totally oversaturated. And I started to get frustrated with seeing, people getting free makeup and free hotel stays and everything was coming into their post for free. And they were saying, hashtag ad and hashtag gifted. And I was thinking, like, this isn't fair. Like, so many people go out and actually, spend their hard earned money to buy this stuff. And they're sitting in a cafe with their friends and they're telling them how good the foundation is or how good the mascara is or the lawnmower or whatever it is they purchased. And then their friend goes out to buy it based on their recommendation. And yet the brands aren't rewarding those people. They're rewarding people who don't even use the product. So I just thought there has to be a way to reward the people who are actually using it and speaking highly about it. And that's kind of how it started.
My gosh, that's so amazing. And a great point. Because, yes, I was getting frustrated with those people like, I want free things. I want to
Mm.
take a vacation. Like, what about me? So that's just so amazing how you are helping everyone in a sense. And if I understand, it didn't start with just video. Like, you were doing writing first. Like, I don't even know where to start first because you yourself are a writer. So,
So
yeah.
yeah, okay. So initially it started out as a blog marketplace, if you will. So I noticed, my first business was a magazine, and I used to get content from all over the world to put out on the magazine. And I noticed during that time that there were just so many blogs out there that were so well written, and they were on parenting and relationships and food and drink and everything. And they weren't being monetized. Like there were no ads on them. Clearly, they had been written and then just left there. And so I thought, there's a lot of businesses out there that need content that might not be able to write it themselves because a lot of owners, just because they're an expert in the business, it doesn't mean they're an expert writer or they don't know how to put a pen to paper. my dad, for example, he's been a wine merchant for 50 years. And while I was developing the idea, I was like, why don't you put, an article about why red wine tastes nice with red meat, or why,
Mm.
Prosecco is good on a sunny day, or, something that everybody wants to read. And he was like, because I can't write. I don't know how to write. And I just thought, God, there's so many wine blogs out there that would be perfect for his wine shop website, and would be perfect for social media, or perfect for SEO, or whatever it was. Um, and so I tried to figure out how to marry the two. So I built and designed marker video, or marker content, sorry, with that in mind. And it went really well. We got loads of bloggers on. I just kind of went out there and said, look, if you've written a blog and you have a back catalog, it has to be evergreen. It can't be anything like newsy, and that would be time sensitive. Like, it would have to be something that you could use in a year's time, or you could use in 10 years time. So yeah, we got 100,000 people within a year signing up, submitting their content, almost more than we could take actually as a startup. And it went really well. I got investment and everything was going great. And then ChatGPT came along nearly overnight, as I think we all kind of saw. I knew AI was, being used in a lot of different industries and stuff. I don't know if anyone really expected it to come along and, I suppose, be used by so many people so fast. And it was just a direct threat to what I had built, because I was, I went over to San Francisco to raise money, and I was essentially being laughed at by investors, because they were like, this is the antithesis of AI. I mean, like, we're investing in everything that's the opposite of what this is. You're talking about human generated stuff that has errors, And I said, yeah, but people want things from humans, and they want experiences, and they want, I really dug my heels in, and I tried to convince them. And in the end, it was one investor that said to me, I totally believe in what you're doing, and I think it's great, but good enough is good enough for most people, and ChatGPT is good enough, and nobody's going to pay for something that they can basically get for free. And that was really a catalyst for me, because I thought, okay, either I close the company or I figure out how to pivot the company. And yeah, I started to look at my own Instagram and my own TikTok, and I noticed all these people that weren't necessarily influencers, but they were just regular people that kind of looked like me. And, the algorithm was showing me people in my demographic. And so, so clever now that just knows whether you're married or you're not married, or, what age you are, basically. And so I just thought, I wonder, is there anything where the everyday person could open up their kitchen cabinet or their bathroom cabinet and pick out something that they love, or 5 things, and talk about them in a very real and authentic way. And it turns out there wasn't. There was a lot of people trying to solve this problem of the user generated, authentic stuff. And they were all kind of agencies popping up. And the business model was really, you as a brand or a business send out free products to the agency sends it to whoever they have on their books, and then these people film themselves with a script talking about how much they love the product, and then you purchase the videos. And for me, that just seemed like there was still a lot of holes in that. Like, first of all, it wasn't instant. Like, they couldn't just buy a video straight up, which you can on Marker. But also the point of why maybe influencers aren't as effective as they used to be is because people don't trust them anymore. And the trust is like the most important thing if you're going to purchase something, which is why we purchase so many things based on our friends and family's recommendations, because we trust them. And so it wasn't solving the trust problem, because everyone could still see it was scripted. And to have a scripted video, you have to be a very good actor for anyone to believe that you actually like it. So, and there aren't that many very good actors in the world. So yeah, so it wasn't solving the problem. And look, a lot of them are working, and there's a lot of big companies that are doing it, and it might work for some brands, which is great. I think we're completely different in that we're, first of all, a tech company, so we're not an agency. And really what we're trying to do, and what I was trying to do with the written content, was build essentially like a Shutterstock, a stock library that people could just use. They could just search a brand name, download it straight away. There'd be no real human intervention other than the quality control. And so that was it. So yeah, it started out as written because I love the written word. But of course, you know, life happens. You have to, I think as an entrepreneur, as you know, you have to be amiable. And I think I can't remember which famous person said it, but it was like, you know, the mark of success is somebody who's able to change with
Mm,
the tides, and you have to be able to change and not be so married to your idea that you can't take criticism, or you
yeah.
can't take, like, you know, that might not work in today's world. So yeah, so I had to change fast, and actually it's a much easier idea to grow because people just get it straight away.
Yeah, like that's so interesting. I like writing as well, but I find it so difficult. But I just wanted to touch on the fact that you said you were trying to get investment into this company and people were laughing at you. First, I'm so sorry that that happened to you, but
Oh, listen, if you've
kudos.
ever tried to raise money, anyone listening that has tried to raise money won't even blink at that.
Um,
That happens. You know, it's a very tough game. And they weren't, well, they actually, I have a few people did laugh at me. But you know what? I'll be the last one laughing.
Exactly. Because again, like, look at you now. And I was going to say, like, bravo to you for sticking to what you believed in and being like, no, this is good. And everything that you described is just so true because Chat GPT, like, it's, I don't know, it's a love-hate relationship, I guess. I could see the benefits, but yeah, at the end of the day, you do want like a person, and you were mentioning, like, yes, people make errors. And I know even with starting this podcast, like I get embarrassed telling people to listen because I'm like, oh, the audio's bad and I don't know what I'm doing. And they're like, no, but I actually like that because you know that it's real and it's
Exactly.
really cool. So, oh, I love that. But I think you had also mentioned that before marker video became what it is now, it was completely different because a person named Allison had helped you.
Hmm.
So yeah, kind of what did Marker look like before Allison and after Allison? Like, what was her impact?
Well, I mean, Alison really has been with Marker since day one. So Alison was a intern that I hired in 2012, 2013, I think, with the first business, the magazine. And she was kind of, I think, straight out of college, and she was applying for I think it was a digital marketing internship. And she was like, you know, totally green. She came in, we were all young. Um, and in that business, I'd say I hired over 50 people. And she was the only one that I ever said I would hire again if I had another business, because she was so, and is so loyal, so hardworking. And I think when you grow as an entrepreneur or as a business owner, and you've hired many people, and you hire people based on things like, you know, their experience or their qualifications and all this, I've learned to hire and want people around me now that I really respect and I get on well with, and I like the way they speak about their family, and I like the way they speak about their friends, and I like their morals and their values, and they're aligned with mine. And, you know, all of those things are so much more important because anyone can learn anything. I mean, I really believe that, unless it's like, obviously, you're
Yeah.
a doctor or a rocket
Yeah.
scientist. But
Might take
when it
time, but
comes to business and this kind of stuff, like, I'm learning every day. We're all learning. I didn't, you know, I dropped out of college. I don't have any qualifications. I never learned how to do this. You just learn by doing. So the important thing is that you hire people and you're with people that are open to learning, open to criticism, you know, open to criticizing you if they need to. So Alison has been a total rock in that sense. And last summer, when I thought we were going to have to close the business, Marker Content, because of, you know, I really didn't know what I was going to do. And I remember saying to her, like, you know, we don't have any money left, or, you know, the money's running out, and like, I don't know what to do, and I'm really not sure, and there's a couple of things I'm thinking, but again, I don't really know. And she said, you know, I'll take a pay cut, you can stop paying me, but whatever happens, I'm with you until the end, and I'm not going anywhere, you know. And she easily could have said at that point, I'm going to start looking for work because I see this as a sinking ship, which it was. And I hope you don't mind. And I wouldn't have minded, but she didn't. She was like, no, I'm sticking with you. And that is worth so much, so
Oh, wow. That's amazing. I just want to like give a round of applause to Allison because that
yeah.
is really huge. Like, hey, I'll take a pay cut, whatever. I pray you find more people like that to,
Exactly.
be part of your business. And I'm so glad that you have her. Because, yeah, you mentioned going through that hard time in the business and not knowing what to do. And I'm sure every entrepreneur can relate to that. And even if someone's listening and they're not an entrepreneur, you've definitely had the moment in your life like,
Yeah.
what are we going to do? So, can you kind of speak a bit more as to, I imagine maybe you were doing quite well and then something might have happened where it was like, uh-oh, don't know what to do. And then how did you get out of that?
I mean, well, the main example was the ChatGPT thing. And I honestly like I was sitting there one day and I started to get like pain in my chest and I started to not be able to take a deep breath and stuff. And I was like, oh my God, I don't know what's happening. Because one of my investors had basically he just like roared at me, he was like, what are you gonna do? And what's gonna happen and everything. And I just didn't have the answers for him. And I could not see a path ahead of me. I couldn't see it. And I just didn't know what to do. I went into my like local pharmacy, drugstore, whatever, and I was like, I've got this pain in my chest. I don't know what's wrong. I think it might be anxiety. And they were like, yeah, it could be anxiety. They gave me magnesium, and I tried to but I just could not see. And I'm sure everybody listening has gone through something similar in any area of life. It happens where you're like, oh my God, this is so overwhelming. I don't know what my next foot forward is. Um, and yeah, it took a few weeks. It took me talking, to my parents, and also it's a really hard thing to admit because everybody has their own stuff going on. Like it's not as if all your friends and family are just waiting for you to have a crisis so that they can help you. Like, everybody has stuff going on and you don't want to burden people with what's going on. But I ended up going to my GP, my doctor, and I was like, this is so overwhelming and I'm not sure what happened. And she was like, well, I think that's what we call an anxiety attack or a panic attack, and that can happen. And it sounds like, it's very overwhelming for you at the moment. And yeah, she just completely helped. She just listened and was like, sometimes we need a break. And I think you might need a break, even just for a couple of weeks or whatever. Again, very difficult to take a break when there's so much pressure on you. But I did. I managed to take a little break. And at that point, it was like the idea just kind of swam into my mind. I don't know how to explain it, but basically I just one day I was like, you know what? Do you know what I did? I thought, okay, there's so many things against you right now. Like ChatGPT is against you, AI is against you, the investors are shouting at you, there's no money in the bank. Like, okay. And I just thought, okay, Greta, why don't you list out the things that you do have? So you have a platform, you have 100,000 people signed up to that platform. You've got Allison, and what can you do with those things? And I thought the 100,000 people that have signed up, they all signed up because they wanted to make money. They wanted to make money from their blogs. So how can I make them money? I have to make them money somehow. If I can make them money, I have a business. And that's when I was on Instagram, and I was like, these are just regular people. This is just like, I want to see regular people, and I know everyone else does as well. And so at that point, I had the idea. I'd met someone at the Web Summit at a tech conference, and she was doing marketing for a big beauty brand. And so I rang her and I just said, look, we haven't spoken since we last met, but I have an idea and I was thinking if I could run it by you. And she said, oh my God, this is so timely. She said, and this is a huge company. She was like, we have just pivoted from, influencers to this regular people thing, but we don't know where to get them. We don't know where to find them. We're looking for all this diversity, menopausal women, non-binary people, acne prone, like the whole everybody. And they're not in agencies. They're just, the everyday person. So she said, this would be amazing if you could do this. And that was kind of enough for me to say, okay, I think there could be something here. But I had no money. So I had to go to my Enterprise Ireland, who are a government startup fund, and they've been super supportive of me. And I feel incredibly privileged and lucky to have them. But they were an investor in the first part of the business. And so I went to them and said, look, ChatGPT came along, and it was I'm sorry, but I don't think I'm going to be able to continue that business. But I do have an idea, but I need more money. And they said, yeah, they were like, look, that's a great idea, Greta. You know, we really commend you for coming up with it. It's if you can find a way to build it and XYZ, reach these milestones, whatever it was, we'll support you. And they did. And again, I mean, Enterprise Ireland are that we're obviously here in Ireland. I know you're in Vancouver. I don't know if you've similar supports over there, but it's a massive, massive privilege. It took me years to get in and years of pitching and years of applications and meetings. And, you know, it wasn't easy. It's not like you just pick up the phone and go, hey, can I have a couple of grand? But once you're in, I do feel that they were so supportive. So all of those different things, you know, came together. But I think kind of to answer your question, I suppose, what did I do? Well, obviously I freaked out. Obviously I had a panic attack. And then I just kind of zoomed out a bit and I was like, we can do this. We can do this. Just figure out what it is you have and then work with that. And that's how you move forward, kind of thing.
I love that. And my biggest takeaway from that story was just like relax. Obviously, again, you can freak out. That's normal. That's human. It's part of the experience. But yeah, after that, definitely like just take a moment of rest and yeah, just reevaluate, like you said, because I've had those moments too, and it's like, how am I going to do this? Where am I gonna get people? How like you just don't know. And I know like as soon as I kind of spoke the words, I'm gonna start a podcast with people who own their own businesses. Then I literally met someone like that day or a few days later, like, yeah, I own my own business. I'm like, hey, I'm like gonna do this podcast. And it's crazy because sometimes you don't have anything to show for it yet.
I know. And
So
there you
shout
go.
out.
And I mean, and then you know, you're thinking, well, how am I gonna make money and how am I gonna get 50 guests and how am I gonna get, you know, I don't know, Jeff Bezos on or whoever you want
Yes.
on. But the thing is, you just have to start and then you just have to do something every day towards it, even if it's just a small thing every day, I think.
Mhm.
Um, and it's totally unrealistic, I think, when people are like, you have to be working, you know, 100 hours a week and you have to be totally obsessed and consumed with it and blah, blah, blah. If you do that, well, if I did that, which I have done before and it just hasn't worked,
Oof.
it's just burnout. It's
Me too.
just like, you know, so you just, and also then what really helps me is reminding myself, I'm not saving lives, you know, I'm not there in a hospital, a nurse, a doctor, you know, on the front line in the war. Like I'm just not. It's not that important what I'm doing. And, you know, we're only here for such a short time. We're basically on a floating rock in the middle of a universe. No one knows why we're here. You know, there's all these things you can remind yourself of. It doesn't actually matter that much. Like you've got investors shouting at you. They invested, it's their money. It's you are responsible for their money, but it's not the end of the world. So trying to remind yourself of all those things, I think helps as well. And just remembering that like none of it really matters.
I love that. And as they say, money comes, money goes. So I'm trying not
Mhm.
to get too bogged down by it. And I am not at the stage in my entrepreneurial journey where I'm asking for money yet, but it's coming soon. So
Mhm.
this is
And you
kind of
get
a
it.
personal question. Like, how did you go about, pitching and any advice to share on how to get investors? Like, I know they may laugh at me, but I just have to take it on the chin and keep going.
Oh my God, you have to remove your ego, remove all the humility that you have. And it's really hard because 99% of people say no. And you just have to accept that. And at the beginning, that's really hard because you take it personally and you're like, what do you mean? It's a really good idea. Um, these people, investors. So how did I do it? So I was on like social welfare. I started by reaching out to government grants. So like there's different startup grants, different grants for women, there's loads of different grants. So I applied, just kept applying application after application. I think I got 10,000 as a grant from my own government. And that was enough for me to start building. Um, and then like LinkedIn, like, I mean, my first investor was, and then this is just sounds like a story of privilege, but this is the reality for me. It was, I was at a barbecue with my boyfriend at the time, and his aunt, it was like I hadn't met anyone there. I was sitting beside some guy, a man who was lovely, and he was like, what do you do? And I was like, oh, I got this, idea for this thing. I'm trying to raise money and stuff. And he was like, oh, what is it? And we just got on super well. We were like we just had such a laugh. He was really fun. And he was like, we should go for a coffee and let's talk about this more. And we had a few coffees, and he was like, you know what, I'll put in some money. And he put in a small amount of money, but it was actually enough to give me a bit of confidence, because he was a successful businessman. So he had loads of really good questions. He knew I was right at the beginning of my story. And he kind of refined my pitch a bit and was like, you need to know this, you need to know these numbers, you need to know where you're going to be in a year, all these things, which is, you just don't know. And what I did was I downloaded a free template on Google of a business plan. And I think anyone, you should do it if you haven't, but anyone who wants to start a business should do that. ChatGPT now has them, but like, there's so many questions in a template of a business plan that you just will not know the answer to. But it's a great place to start, because ultimately you're going to have to know the answers to all of those questions. And so just go through them, one question a week or whatever, and research it and be like, how do I answer this question? How do I figure this question out? Because a lot of it is just figuring stuff out. Like, what is the problem you're solving, and where are you going to be in 6 months, and if you get this investment, how many customers are you going to have, or listeners, or whatever it is. It doesn't actually matter if it's not true. The purpose of it is so that you can think more about the future of your idea. So that was the first bit of money I got in, and then I think I just got more kind of grants, and then I got significant money from Enterprise Ireland, which was great. But advice of getting money, like, the money's out there. Two great investors that I just contacted coldly on LinkedIn. I didn't even know who they were. I just, you search angel investors, whatever. I just reached out to them and was like, hi, my name's Greta. This is my idea. I'd love to meet for a coffee, get your advice on a couple of things. One in, I would say, 100 will write back and say either no or we'll have a call. So it's just a numbers game. You just got to keep going. You can't expect, because it's such a good idea, not saying my idea is so good, but anyone with an idea, if it's not proven, then people don't have the time. But some people take chances, and definitely people take chances on you, and just keep going is how you do it, I think.
Good. Because yes, I've definitely been looking, and I get overwhelmed because it's a lot of reading and, like you said, figuring out. But I like that you said you just went on Google and tried to look for a business plan. Because yeah, I often say, between me and Beyonce's internet, there's nothing I can't do, because
there
it's
you go.
there.
This is the
Yeah.
thing.
So.
And there's just no excuse now to not learn. Everything's on YouTube. Like, there's so many business terms that when you don't have a degree in business or whatever, that you hear and you're like, I don't know what that means, and I don't understand that part of accounting, or I don't understand that. Okay, go learn it. Like, there's nothing to stop you learning it. You can listen to a podcast on it, you can watch a YouTube video on it. Like, so I just don't think, it is overwhelming, and no one expects you to know everything. Like, I've been in this startup game for 8 years now, and there's so much, the majority I don't know. And there's words, I had a meeting with an investor earlier, and she said a word that I didn't know, and I said, sorry, I actually don't, what does that acronym mean? And she said, oh, sorry, it's blah blah blah. People don't mind you asking. People understand that, like, not everybody knows everything. You might know everything about your idea, but that doesn't mean you know everything about everything. So I do think it's very powerful as well to admit that you don't know something and say, sorry, I'm not familiar with that word. Can you explain it? It's a sign of, intelligence to admit that as well, I think. So never feel, and I totally know what you're saying, but like, just, if you don't know anything, which you won't know anything, like all of us, just look it up and then write it down and then try and learn it and then move on to the next question. But like, if you're not learning, you're not growing. So
yeah, like, what are you doing? But I love what you said, like, admitting that you don't know is intelligence, because there are a few people in this world that I've met, and they did try to make me feel bad for not knowing. But, my rebuttal is okay, I wasn't born and someone wasn't there, was, hey, this is everything you need to know in life to survive it. Like, you
And
figure it
also,
out.
you didn't know before you knew. So there was a stage in your
Exactly.
life that you didn't know this. So I think anyone that makes someone feel bad for not knowing something is deeply insecure
Yes.
because like
Ugh.
how could you say that? Like, so yeah. And it's the same way as you would be if someone asked you, sorry, I don't know what that means. You'd be like, oh, I'm so like, excuse me, this is what it means. Like,
Exactly.
so
Yeah. Oh,
we're all
because
just
we're
here.
yeah, we're all human, but like, it sounds to me like this was all meant to be for you between meeting that guy at the wedding, or sorry, was it a wedding? Meeting
It
that
was
guy where
surprising.
you met him. Oh, barbecue. Yeah.
No, the funny thing about that is, and I think it's so important to say, before I had met him, I had downloaded the business plan, I think, on Google or whatever. Because I remember thinking when I met him, he said, do you have a business plan or do you have something? And I said, oh, I have started one or something. Anyway, this was a while ago now, but I remember thinking to myself, this is what they mean when they say luck is when preparation meets opportunity.
Yeah.
So if I had met him without doing some research and without like having some kind of pitch ready, he wouldn't have been interested. But and people say like, oh, it was so lucky that you met that person. And when you get more successful, people throw the word luck at you all the time. They're like, oh, you're so lucky, you're so lucky. Luck is only happens when you're prepared for it
Mm,
and when you can see the opportunities. Because if you're not prepared and you don't believe in yourself, you're not going to see the opportunities. Opportunities are everywhere, and you'll see them. If you believe in yourself and you do the work and you learn it. But there's no person, I think, that's successful in the world that didn't work and learn it so that when the opportunities were in front of them, and whether that's Kim Kardashian or somebody, that wasn't privileged growing up at all, everybody has to, everyone, I don't know, needs to learn before they get the opportunities. Otherwise, it doesn't
yes.
matter.
Ooh, you're really like preaching to me right now, because I think I spend so much time in my anxiety, like, how am I going to get people? Is it going to make money? And we already said it, just start. And then, like you
Mm-hmm.
said, the luck is when preparation meets opportunity. Because again, when things have happened for me, which I think I'm lucky for, it's because, yeah, I put in like half the work, and then I like to think the universe or God or like the
Yeah,
greater
so do
beyond
I.
just meets you halfway. And then it's like,
Yes, I agree. And like, look at what you're doing now. Like, you've taken huge initiative to do this, to build this. That's, people, there'll be things that come on your path and people say, well, you're so lucky. You're lucky you're able to do a podcast. I'd never know how to do a podcast. You didn't know how to do a podcast before you started.
yeah,
Like, you didn't know how to structure a podcast before you started. Now you do because you've done so many and you're like a
yeah,
total professional. But people are like, oh, I'd never be able to do that. I'd never be able, you obviously that comes naturally to you. It doesn't come naturally to you. You learned how to do it and you put in
yeah,
the time. So I would never say to somebody like, oh, well, you're lucky because you're able to stand up on stage and pitch really well. No, they put the work in. So they're
yeah.
not lucky. They're just hardworking.
Oh, I love that, because I was gonna ask you if you thought maybe you were destined to be an entrepreneur. Do you think you just worked towards it, or was that something that was like always inside of you?
In terms of destiny, I don't know. I don't know what destiny is. And I struggle with, free will and destiny, like how much of it is up to you and how much of it is in your path and was always meant for you. Um, in school, I was nothing. I didn't really, I barely passed my exams. I was creative. I loved art. I loved English, but I didn't do extremely well in any of them. And then I dropped out of college and I thought I wanted to be a bartender because I loved bartending and I did it everywhere, Greece and London and Australia. And I just thought, why would anybody not want this job? It's the greatest job in the world. You get to do music, you get to meet people every night, you get to do shots. It was like the best. And then I kind of, I kind of thought, do you know what? Like, I remember I was bartending in Mykonos and in Greece, and sorry, I wasn't bartending. At the time I was a lounge girl, so I was like presenting, two big bottles of champagne with sparklers coming out of them to very rich people who were spending thousands and thousands and tipping hundreds and everything. And I remember thinking, actually, I want to be on the other side of this. Like, I want to be sitting there getting the champagne instead of serving it. And so that's when I came home, and I didn't, like, no one was going to hire me because I had no qualifications. But anyway, I started the magazine with two friends, and it all kind of started from there. But I would have been very, and I still am very strong on if you want this life, you have to envision it. You have to believe that you're going to get it, and then you have to work towards it. My mother was a very successful entrepreneur, so I think in business, in tech, and so when I was growing up, I was watching her do that, totally not realizing that was a very unusual thing for a woman in the 90s to go out there and pitch and build this technology that was totally innovative. Like, it was so cool. And I look at it now and I'm like, God, she had, like, she had four
Yeah.
kids. How did she do
What?
that? Like, I
Wow.
just don't know how she did that, but she did. But for me, it was just, that's my mom. That's what women do, and now it's just crazy. So I'd say probably that did have an effect on me. I think I loved watching her come in from work and talk to my dad about it and be like, this is what happened today, and da da da, and she was all about the business, and she just worked in a totally male orientated world as well, which was amazing. And she just, yeah, she was incredible. So I'm sure that had something to do with me. And again, maybe people listening will be like, well, of course you're an entrepreneur. Your mother was an entrepreneur. But like my sisters, for example, no interest in business, no interest in being like, one of them's a Montessori teacher. She's absolutely incredible. She's just amazing. And the other one has been like head of a big cheese company, like absolutely huge, knows everything there is to know about wine and cheese, like so interested in people, so interested in food and drink. And she's just, an amazing person. And then my brother's like super creative. He'd work in theater and sound engineering and all that kind of stuff. So we're all very, very different. So I don't necessarily think my mom was that like, you guys need to be in business. She never cared really. She just wanted us to be happy. So no, I don't know whether it was my destiny or not. I think I just kind of followed my nose in a way. I just,
Mm,
and like, it's funny, like I hear people saying, I really want to be an entrepreneur and I really want to have my own startup, but I just don't have an idea. And I think that's kind of weird because I'm like, well, that's wrong, isn't it? Like, surely the reason you start a business is because you see a problem that you know how
mhm.
to solve, or you figured out a way to solve it. I think the whole idea of just wanting to be the boss is kind of odd. I know people do want that. That wasn't for me. I it's not that I want to be the boss. I just thought this is a good idea. So yeah, I don't have an answer on the destiny thing, but I think it's a great topic and I could talk about it
Yeah.
for hours. What do you think?
I love what you said. I followed my nose because for me, I never would have thought I was destined to be an entrepreneur. So,
Mm.
unlike you, I was the good girl in school. I got the good grades. I went to college. I passed. And, they say when you take that path, you're going to get a good job. I guess the job I got was good, but it wasn't like my dream job. Like, once I started working, I wasn't fulfilled. And when like the roles that I took, I was like, why are we doing it like that? Well, can we do this? Hey, can we start this? And I found myself just like having all these ideas. And again, just all the jobs that I took wasn't like fulfilling that need. And I've always loved like speaking to people and talking and being creative. So, yeah, when I tried to go for those jobs, I kept getting rejected. So then it was like, well, fine, I'll do it myself. Like, how hard could it be? All right. Again, like getting on the internet. How do you start a podcast? Here we go. And,
Yeah.
and yeah, just kind of fell into it. But that's why I have this podcast to speak to other entrepreneurs. Like, how are you doing this? Because I just started yesterday. Like, I don't know what I'm doing.
No, but and as well, like I was rejected from so many jobs. I applied for so many jobs. I was rejected. And also growing up, I would have been quite like I love to write. I thought maybe I'd be a writer or a teacher. But sometimes I just think I don't know. about your gut, I suppose. And I also think your motivation is important. Where is your motivation coming from? I think my motivation potentially is from people that potentially said that I couldn't do it, or that it really
Mm.
wasn't me, or it wasn't, there's a great acceptance speech. It's one of the Golden Girls. I saw it recently and I thought it was so good. She goes up to like accept her award and she said, so many people rejected me when I was auditioning for different roles or whatever.
Mm.
And she said, but every kick was a boost. And that's how I feel. And it especially when you're trying to raise money or doing interviews or whatever. When people tell you, no, it's not good enough, you're not good enough, whatever reason they pick, that gives me kind of fire. And I'm like, you know what?
Mm.
I'm going to show you that I am good enough. Everyone has different motivations, and it's a very personal thing as to why you want to be successful or why you want to do what you want to do. But I think part of it for me is definitely, I think people kind of underestimated me. They thought maybe I was a bit, I don't know. I think as a child, apparently I was quite like slow and quiet, and like, all my siblings were kind of up and around dancing and talking and chatting and really smart and really, and I was kind of a bit more
Oh,
quiet. So they're
I
like,
was quiet too.
yeah. So we'll show them.
Exactly. Well, we are showing them, which again, I think
Well,
is so
exactly.
cool, right? And everyone roots for the underdog because to your point about every kick is a boost, like every rejection is just like, okay, well, how can I get better? And like I said, I got denied from other, like podcast things or creative things. And it's like, okay, well, let me see what you're doing and no
Mhm.
shade, but let me make it better or let me just add me into it. And then it's just gonna be different.
Totally
Yeah.
unique. And that's the main thing. And you're so good at it. And your voice is beautiful. So that's a big thing.
Thank you. Well, because love those compliments. Thank you so much for saying that. But sometimes I hear it and I'm like, okay, so why did they hire me then? Do you see what you're missing? But like I like to think everything kind of works out. Again, is it destiny? Is it free will?
I definitely think when doors close, it's a protection for some reason. It wasn't meant for you, and not to worry. It's really hard to remember that. It's really hard to remember that when you're unemployed looking for a job and you're not getting anywhere, or you're single and you're looking to meet somebody or whatever, and you bad date and bad interview and all the rest, and everyone's like, it's all happening for a reason and bigger things are coming, and you're just like, oh, if I hear that one more time. But then when you get through that, you kind of realize that that was probably true. It's just not very nice to hear it at the time.
Exactly. Well, I mean, because with all that being said, like, what have you learned about yourself once you became an entrepreneur? And yeah, did you shock yourself?
Um, I think resilience is probably one of the things that if I do become very successful will stand me. And resilience in that, you know, there was a long time where I wasn't raising money and I was on social welfare and I was living with my parents and it wasn't moving. The dial wasn't moving. And then it was, I couldn't get enough customers. And then, but I kept going. And I think my dad said to me once, he was like, I'm so impressed that you've stuck with it, and I just thought to myself, what's the alternative? Like, I'm not going to quit. Um, and then with the ChatGPT thing, and, there have been a few headwinds that I think if you can stay calm, and you obviously I had my panic attack, but if you can stay calm and keep going, that is most of successful business people, they just keep going. That's really it. Like, it's just, and you pivot and you move and you do different things, but if you can just keep going through the storm and not put it down, um I think that's half of it, maybe even more than half of it. So I would say, yeah, my resilience in that I just kept going. And maybe that's really naive. Maybe it's like, oh my God, like
Yeah.
you should give up. But I don't know. An entrepreneur or a business person, from what I can tell, is very similar to like being a parent. I don't have kids myself, but like I see with my siblings, like, it's kind of, I'm not comparing them saying they're the same thing. I'm just saying that, like, I do
It's
think
skills.
entrepreneurs get an awful lot of like, wow, you're so amazing. It's not really. It's just like being a mother or a father. Like you just have to deal with problems as they come to you. You have to stay calm, you know, you have to keep moving forward. You can't forget like all these different, it's just kind of the same thing. It's just life and everybody goes through different things. So yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, I wouldn't like put too much emphasis on entrepreneurs being amazing. I don't think they are amazing. I think they're just very naive people that think they can probably do something.
Yes, because I think it was another entrepreneur. It was someone, she was saying like she thinks entrepreneurs have to be realistic. But I was like, are you sure? Because some of the ones I've seen were all a little, I like your word naive, because I was going to say like crazy or maybe a bit too hopeful because it is like,
Yeah.
no, it can't fail. So I'm going to do whatever it takes to keep going, which I mean, I think most of the time it works out, but there's an exception to the rule, right? Every now and then it's kind of like, okay, you can give
Well,
this.
it, like you say that, but like so many things go wrong. Like so many things go wrong. And when you start a business, people say to you, "Oh, it's going to take years. It takes years, and there's going to be all these problems in between." And so, and you just think to yourself, "That's not going to be me." Like that just won't happen to me. I know what I'm doing. I know exactly what the plan is.
Yep.
Just makes so much sense. There's absolutely no way this isn't going to be a huge success. And I was like that. I think everybody has to be like that. And if your dreams, as they say, if your dreams aren't big enough, if people aren't laughing at you, then your dreams aren't big enough. So you have to, have the North Star and just be like, okay, that didn't go as planned. Fair. That definitely bombed, but that's okay. We can try something else. It's just like, it's fine. It's not the end of the world. Yeah, it's a naivety for sure, I think. And I'm friends now with a lot of founders because you meet them through obviously networking and stuff. And yeah, everybody has it. It's just this blind
Yeah.
faith in the work.
Oh, again, like I'm so happy that you persevered through it all because, like I said earlier, I want to be a part of Marker Video. It's so amazing, but I wanted to know for you, like, what is like the most fulfillment that you get from being an entrepreneur?
Um, Good question. I would say I love people. And so I love the world that I'm in at the moment. I love being invited to talks and um, events and conferences, and I get to go to these things and meet these super, super interesting people. I mean, everybody you meet in the startup world and entrepreneur world is so interesting because they're all creating things that don't exist. So unlike other industries or jobs that you have where when you go to a conference or you go to a networking night or whatever, you're dealing with people that are all in your industry most of the time. In the startup world, it's like everybody you meet has an amazing story. And I just think that that is such a privilege. I just love it. Like I love my life in that way. I didn't go into it for that reason, but now that I'm in it and I get invited to these things and I get to make friends with these people who are just so ambitious and like I feel incredibly lucky and so yeah, that's that's
Yay.
it.
No, I love that because, yeah, like I think your love of people is evident in what you're doing because you're literally helping businesses, you're helping people make money, but then you're also helping consumers, like
Yeah.
everyone. And again, I think with ads, you almost think that no, it's not going to benefit everyone. It's only going to benefit like one of the
Well,
people. So that's so cool.
yeah, and like obviously my entrepreneur journey is different to the business, but with the business, I wanted, like a friend of mine said to me the other day, which I was so devastated about. I said something like, "Oh," she said she was using this brand and we were working with the brand, and I said, "Oh my God, do a video for Marker Video. You could make $100. Like that's exactly what they're looking for." And she was like, "Oh no, I'm definitely not pretty enough to be on Marker Video." And I was like, "Oh my God, no, I clearly have not been clear enough. Number one, she's absolutely beautiful, so that's a ridiculous thing to say. But number two, if she thinks, or if anyone thinks that's what we're looking for, that we're looking for like models and influencers. Like it's so not what I'm trying to build. And so I love like I just before the podcast, we got a video in from a lady, and I think she's probably in her 70s. And she was like, I'm just starting out my UGC journey and I just wanted to review this thing. And, I was like delighted because I was like, this is brilliant. Like I want, like, in a way I'm thinking of going into like retirement communities and being like, guys, let's talk about what the products you're using because it's super valuable and you can make some extra side hustle or whatever. I just want, and like, for example, my dad, he's disabled. He's a prosthetic leg. And so there's a lot of things like if we were going on holidays, we'd be looking at the hotels, make sure that they've, facilities and stuff. And a friend of mine's in a wheelchair, same thing. Like I want people to be able to speak about hotels and restaurants and products that they use, and for the brands to see that that's who's using them. And then when they purchase that ad, for example, with my dad, if my dad was like, this is a great restaurant because if you're in a wheelchair, the bathroom is downstairs, you don't have to go upstairs and whatever. If the restaurant uses that as an ad, how powerful is that? That anyone who's in a wheelchair or on crutches or anything can look at that and be like, oh, great, I didn't even need to do anything. I just looked at their Instagram and there's somebody like me. So that's really the big picture. And if I could get to that point where everybody that saw a Marker Video logo on a brand or in a restaurant or in a hotel or something knew like, oh, great, I can do a video on this. And they literally, they're specifically not looking for models and influencers, they just want everybody. That would give me a huge amount of satisfaction.
Well, yay, because I did want to ask, like, what exactly are you looking for in a Marker video? I guess you kind of explained that as already, but yeah, if you could go into more detail and even like what's the difference between a Marker content creator and an influencer?
So an influencer, what we're trying to achieve is authenticity is the main thing. So we want people to say, like, for example, my Rimmel nail varnish, like, why do you love it? How long have you been using it? Where did you get it? How much did you pay for it? Why do you like it over other nail varnishes? Exactly what you would say to your friend, exactly what you would say to your mom or whoever it is that you're trying to convince to buy it because you're like, I'm telling you, it's way better than the other brands or whatever it is. Something authentic. And we do get videos in that can look quite salesy. They can be like, this is the best nail varnish in the world. And I'll tell you, and it's just not what we're looking for. And I don't want to have a platform where it's just salesy, kind of very obvious ads. I love the videos where people are cooking. Like we're talking to a lot of food and drink companies at the moment, and they just want to see people using their products in their meals. And whether you're a student or you're at home cooking for your kids or whatever it is, like, this is how I use, Coleman's mustard or Heinz ketchup or whatever it is. I like to put it on my toast or my pasta. And I like to, they just want to see people using it in different ways. And that's really powerful. Again, like, if you're on FaceTime to your friend and you're cooking and she's like, why are you using tuna with blah, blah, blah? You're like, oh, well, this is a brand I actually love. And, you just have to think to yourself, what would I like to know about that brand and about that product and, about that person? And why is that person like me or whatever reason? So yeah, the main thing is authenticity. I'm trying to, give advertising a new era of authenticity.
To your point, like, I just love everything that you're doing, but you said like, so you still consider yourself a startup?
I actually looked this up the other day because I was trying to explain to somebody the difference between a business and a startup. And I didn't know myself. I was like, what's the difference? So a business is basically something that can make money on day one or like very close to day one because they have whatever. A startup is something where it's unlikely to make money for years and years. It has to grow with investment and it's not going to make a profit for that reason. So yeah, so we're definitely still a startup and will be for a while, I'd say.
I mean, you never know, things can happen, but what about during COVID and like the pandemic? Because I know that was difficult for, well, just everyone, basically. I don't think
Yeah.
anyone wanted to be stuck at home. I know a lot of businesses took a hit, but if I'm recalling correctly, you took a personal hit. Can you kind of talk us through that and yeah, what you learned from it and how you came through?
Yeah, I mean, look, as you say, COVID was a nightmare for the majority of people. And for a lot of people, it was worse than a nightmare. And thankfully I didn't lose anybody, which a lot of people did, people I know, and no funerals and all the most horrific things you can imagine. So I think it's all relative and everybody has a COVID story. And so I'd be very conscious of not being like, God, it was so hard for me. It was much harder for so many people. I got COVID in at the very beginning, like in May or March 2020. I didn't know I got it. I just had a temperature. Um, but yeah, in May, basically, I went into hospital because I fluid around my heart and I just had these chest pains, and it was quite scary because the cardiologist was scared. I think she didn't understand why it was so new. They just didn't understand why it was affecting me the way it was. I was fit and I was healthy. And um, so basically, yeah, I ended up in bed for 10 months without really moving, other than like my mom had to feed me and it was pretty grim. And and then I was in hospital for a while, and my lungs kind of depleted and stuff. So it was just, a lot of people have this story. But I do remember being in the hospital and the cardiologist coming in, and she was kind of going through my test results that day, and she was like, who's going to look after you when you go home? At the time I was living with my parents, and I was just not in a good place because I was like, I just want to get back to myself. And I said to her, when am I going to be able to work again? Because marker content, I'd kind of started it, but it was really all that I had. Like, that was my thing. It wasn't like I was on work leave and I could go with my work colleagues and talk about, that it was just me. It was just marker. That was my dream. And I was like, when can I work again? And she like looked at me like I was insane. She was like, Greta, you can't even climb a set of stairs. So I don't think you're going to be working for a while. And you just need to, leave that idea for the moment. And that was really hard. That was tough because I was like, if I don't have that, and there was no sign of me getting better. Like it was like, well, what am I going to do kind of thing. So that was difficult. And I think when you have something like that, and like I was single at the time, I was living with my folks, my parents had just been sick, like it was just not a great. And again, I have to reiterate, so bad, it's so much worse for so many people. So I realize I'm very lucky. But yeah, my sister was living in Lisbon, she still is, and she rang me, and I was just in a bad like moment in the hospital, and I told her what the doctor said, and I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do and stuff. And she was like, just get on a plane, come over here, stay with me, you can recover here, we'll figure it out. And I was like, God, I can't even think of the energy to pack a bag, but I was like, maybe. But yeah, eventually, like I was on 36 tablets a day at the time. Eventually I got the strength to book a flight and go and stay with her. And, I spent 6 months there kind of. It was good because I was living up. I didn't stay with her. I ended up moving into a place on my own. I never lived on my own before, but I was living in this kind of hole in the wall in Lisbon. It was honestly a total shithole. And I ended up just resting for like 6 months and trying to get my like my mentality back to working and marker. And I started to reach out to investors. I started to like sit at my laptop all day every day, just like reaching out to people, can someone talk to me, anyone. And that's when I started getting calls with investors and stuff. And then that's when I got my first big investment in, and they said, we'll only invest if you move back to Dublin because if you're living there. So I said, fine. And I was kind of my strength had gone up by then, and I felt much better, and that's when I moved. But yeah, so that was, I mean, unfortunately, I'm still on medication every day for long COVID or whatever you want to call it. I don't even know. It's a autoimmune thing that I got from COVID. But I still count myself lucky. Like there's a lot of people who didn't recover. But yeah, not ideal, but I don't think anyone has a good COVID story. Let's be honest.
Yeah, but that was crazy start to finish. But I'm so glad you were able to rest and that your company didn't suffer. I mean, I'm sure at the time you might have been like, oh, everything's over. It feels like it's
Yeah.
suffering, but you
And
know,
it did feel like that, but it also made me realize, and which I think is so crucial and fundamental for anybody in the world, anybody starting, to be able to work is a privilege because so many people can't work because they're sick and they're not able to work. And I just realized when I was in the hospital, I was like, oh my God, I never realized what a privilege it is to be able to work. And I would do anything to be able to work right now. And it's funny because you go through your life thinking like work is like, everyone hates work. Nobody wants to work,
yeah.
blah, blah, blah. That's just not true because if you're able to work, you're lucky. There's so many people who can't work.
Yes, but thank you for sharing that story. I know it was quite personal, but you really taught me something because I can be lazy sometimes, like, oh, I don't want to work or it's too much work, but it truly is a privilege that I have the mental capacity, the physical
Yeah.
capacity, the resources to do this. So, yeah, thank you again just for sharing that story. Like, and I'm so glad you are okay and you're going to continue to be okay. And again, it's only up for here for you and Marker video, but I did want to go back to Marker and where actually did you get the name Marker Video from?
Oh, I was sitting there with my laptop and I was trying to get a domain name and everything with content. It was around content. So everything with content was gone, like Content Angel, Content Buggy, Content Car, content. Like I tried everything. And I was just sitting there and there was a permanent marker on the table and I just put in marker content and it was available. And I was like, I can always change it. So really, it's not that deep. There's nothing about it, but I think it's a strong word marker, and it's easy to pronounce. A lot of people that don't speak English can pronounce it
Mm,
because it's like it's a good structure of a word. So there you go. I mean, I don't think the name of things matters that much if the business is good enough. You look at
okay.
something like Bing or Yahoo or like there's loads of really stupid names. And I also think, I'm not saying those names are stupid, but I also
Yeah.
think like you go to tech conferences and stuff and there's a list of all these startups and they're all, some people are trying to be really clever with their name. And it's like, do you know what? Just pick something that's easy to say and then people will remember it kind of thing.
Mm.
So yeah, I think Marker's strong. I'm going to stick with it for the moment.
Ooh. No, I like it because I did before I let you go want to play like a little game called Making the Mark. Er.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
yeah, and basically I call it a game, but really I was just gonna kind of ask you to describe or, give what is it, like personalities or skills you think it takes to make the mark to be certain things. So the first up, making the mark to be a content creator or a marker video creator? Like what kind of skills and assets? You kind of touched on it before, but
Yeah. I think being yourself, being authentic, saying what you mean, not trying to be everybody else, not trying to follow a script or anything, just be yourself and tell the truth.
ooh, I love that. So again, anybody can do it. So
Mhm.
yes, I'll definitely link everything to where people can sign up to be a marker video content creator. But how can we make the marker for becoming a writer, especially with ChatGPT? Should we still write at
I
this
think it
point?
comes down to, it's such a huge topic because I think it's so interesting how humans have evolved around the technology and how we can see the difference. Like there's a really interesting, I was speaking to a journalist the other day and he said, so there's this thing where so they give like six writers a topic to write about, a fictional topic, and they write like a chapter on a fictional thing. And then they'll give six ChatGPT or AI generated texts the same topics and get them to write about the same thing. And they'll put it out there to this wider group. and you have to vote. It's this website, I think. I'm not getting all these details right, but it's this website. And basically people have to vote whether they want the second chapter. And they're seeing that the general people are only voting for the human thing. Now the AI stuff is obviously structurally perfect. The topic is exactly the same. The subject matter is the same. It's a perfectly written piece. And when you look at it with the naked eye, it's hard to figure out like what the difference is. So what they're seeing is like that humans, we haven't even ourselves understood why we are drawn to certain things and not others. And I think that's so deep, like as in why I think like AI in music is going to be really interesting because why is it that certain songs make us feel certain things and then other songs, make us feel nothing? I think if you want to be a writer or you want to be in anything creative, you have to dig deep and be same thing, like be yourself, tell the truth, be brave and say how you feel and what you mean, because I'm not sure the computers are ever going to be able to do that. I mean, don't maybe that's not true, but only time will tell. And I don't think anyone has the answer. And anyone that says they have the answer, saying like this is what it's going to look like in 10 years, we have no idea. It's so new. And I think art is just such a special thing that I think has to be created from this heart that we all have. Computers don't have that. So
Yeah, no, I love it. Again, I still have hope because everything you said, like just the humanity of it all.
yes,
So,
the humanity, exactly.
yeah. And then the last one, how do you know if you can make the mark to be an entrepreneur?
I don't think there's any blueprint or any steps you can take to know if you're going to be an entrepreneur other than are you willing to work hard and are you willing to learn? And if you have those two things, then anyone can be an entrepreneur.
Oh, I love that because I think I heard you say before that everyone's an expert in something. So, yeah, did you want to kind of speak on that a little bit? Because
Well,
I love
yeah, I
that
mean that
saying.
was definitely true for marker content where we were taking in blog stuff. I felt everyone's an expert on something, and that is so true. I really believe that. And whether that's, parenting or cooking or gardening or listening or whatever it is, everybody is an expert on something. And lots of people think they're not, like, I'm not an expert on anything. I don't know anything about anything. That's not true. You have an interest in something. Like I said to my sister recently, I was like, I don't have any interest. And she was like, what do you mean? I was like, you love comic books and you love all these different things that are kind of weird and kooky, and I don't have anything like that. And she was like, what do you mean? You're interested in energy and you're interested in business and you're like, I think people think like, oh God, I don't have any skills. I'm not interested. You are. You just have to, again, be truthful. And also, I think people want to be interested in things for some reason because I think they make them seem, I don't
Yeah.
know, like I want to be interested in art or wine or something. If you're interested in, Grey's Anatomy, that's fine. You can be an expert on Grey's Anatomy, but everybody's an expert on something. Uh, so that's what
I
I think. And if you find yourself being interested in something, then just be an expert on it.
Oh, I love that. And yeah, so I think pretty much everybody makes the mark but I'm sorry if that was too cheesy. But
No, I love it.
yeah. But yeah, just kind of wrapping it up, like honestly, I see so much success in your future. And I think that's mainly because, like you said earlier, you just love people. Like you are in it to help people and it's so genuine. So you can't fail with that mentality. And you've already shown how much you persevere. But for you, where do you want to take or manifest a marker to be in like the next 5 years or so?
Yeah, so I basically want the marker logo to be on like every product you pick up in the supermarket or anywhere. Just a little ring light, which is the logo. And when you see that with a QR code, you're like, oh, great, I'm going to review this product and then I can make money. Same with if you're in a hotel or you're at a theme park or you're in a restaurant and you see the QR code and the logo, you're like, oh, great, they're working with Marker, which means they don't pay influencers. They really pay their customers, which is great. I want it to be super recognizable, like all over the world. And I want people to be making money from it. Like I want you to be sitting there with your friends and you get a little ding notification on the app being like, oh my God, I just made $200 because I sold 2 videos about my moisturizer that I'm using or whatever. And that people use it as a proper side hustle piece.
Mm.
And they have a way of making money where they didn't before, just by talking about things that they're already talking about. So that's the big dream.
Well, yay, it's going to come true. Everything's getting in line for you. Thank you
Thank you.
so much. I mean, like
Thank you for
my
having me.
last, of course, I was gonna say like my last question I like to leave open to my guests. I phrase it like if you were gonna lose your voice tomorrow, like what was kind of like
Oh my
be the
God.
last thing you would want to say? You'll get your
Wow.
voice back though. I don't want it to be like too like deep or anything, but just like
We'll
24
just
hour
go
voice
for it.
loss.
I think, as in, join Marker Video. That would be great. Tell your friends. And yeah, I mean, if you're thinking about starting your own business, just go for it and know that it's going to be hard and it's not going to be easy. But most things in life aren't easy, and anything that's worth it definitely doesn't come that easy. So lots of people say like, oh, but if I start now, it'll be 8 years before I know anything. You're going to be 8 years older anyway. You might as well do something in the 8 years. So just start where you are. Start where you are and start by using Marker Video and making money that way.
I know. I was gonna say start at your mark.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I love puns.
Put
You
your
you
gloves
do.
on. Put your gloss on. Get your boss on behind the glass.
Mwah.